We are full on into summer and about to launch another Magic Menopause program. At the time of this recording, we're just wrapping up our spring Magic Menopause. And in our live calls, I get to hear the stories and share the experience of women through their transfiguration, if you will, into their second spring, and some well into their second spring. We have women in their 30s through their 70s in our program. And one of our golden ladies, one of our 70-year-olds yesterday shared openly about her reigniting her intimacy and her desire and her joie de vivre and feeling like life is in full bloom again. And I loved hearing that. And one of the other members, a young 40-year-old, like, you are inspiring all of us, she told her. And I love this community. When we create, and I keep saying the Magic Menopause community, this community and the Girlfriend Doctor Club and our community here is a blue zone. We are creating a blue zone. That is the healthiest, longest living population, but also with a mission, with caring and paying it forward, giving to others and sharing with others that, while menopause is necessary and mandatory, suffering is optional. And there's one next right step at a time we can take at any age to improve our journey. A woman wrote me this morning and she said, I have a 28-year-old daughter, and I want her to really start taking action steps before her perimenopause so that she can just sail through that aspect of her journey too. Any issues so she doesn't have to struggle with fertility, and what do you recommend we do? And when I get that question, I always say start with the hormone fix. My book, The Hormone Fix, with its 10-day hormone detox in there, and all the chapters on empowering our physiology, removing hormone disruptors, optimizing oxytocin as we handle stress and reset our circadian rhythm. All of that is critical to optimal hormone management. And I can tell you, time and time again, I hear these incredible stories. So I look forward to sharing more of that with you in the season to come. And today, delve more into the menopause mysteries and how we can really continue to be empowered through menopause and well beyond, so that our lifespan equals our health span and equals our sex span. We've got to make sure all of that is connected. So today, my guest on the Girlfriend Doctor Show is Andrea Donsky. She's known as the menopause educator and researcher to her nearly 350,000 TikTok followers. She is a nutritionist on a mission to change the conversation around perimenopause and menopause. She is a 4-time published menopause researcher and entrepreneur with 25 years of experience in the health and wellness space. She's also a respected multi-award winning influencer, media personality, speaker, and author. She hosts the popular podcast Menopause Reimagined and appears as a menopause expert on television across North America. Her latest adventure is We Are Morphous, which helps women to reimagine menopause. So I'm looking forward to interviewing her today. Join me and welcome Andrea Donsky to the Girlfriend Doctor Show. Welcome, Andrea, to the Girlfriend Doctor Show. It's good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I want to talk about how you got interested in perimenopause and menopause. Like, what has been your mission?
So how I got into it was probably because, like a very similar story to so many other women is I was experiencing it myself, had no idea what was happening to my body. And I thought, well, considering that I'm pretty much like my job is I'm an educator, I thought, well, if I didn't know anything about it, I'm guessing other women didn't know either. So I made it my mission to literally educate as many women as I can, find out what their experiences are, help younger women who are coming into it to know what is coming up, so that I feel like Gen Xers, we were so taken by surprise by perimenopause and menopause. I mean, when I was 47, it was 2 months after my 47th birthday, I got my first hot flash. And my first thought was, am I in menopause? Like, I didn't know the word perimenopause existed. I know it's a newer term, but I didn't know what it meant. I didn't even know what menopause meant. I knew nothing about it. And at that time, I was in the health and wellness world for 17 years. So it was my job to understand my body, to understand what we're putting in and on our body. And I thought, well, I knew absolutely nothing. And now I'm just going to literally spend the rest of my career just trying to educate, or at least like a majority of it, trying to educate women what to expect and kind of what's coming next, and do research around it, because we all know that we need more research in this area.
We definitely do. Well, what were some surprising things that you found as you started digging in?
Well, I would say that maybe surprising, not surprising, was that I was right that most of us didn't really know much about it. We didn't talk to our parents. We don't learn about it in school. Like my daughter, who's in grade 5, she learned about puberty, but there was no mention of menopause in that. And for my daughter who was in high school, same thing, or my son that was in high school, same thing. So I would say it's surprising to me that something that 51% of the population will go through if we're blessed to live long enough, that there's zero education, awareness, talk about it. Now it's changing, thankfully. It's so nice to see how, the it's all changing and that we're learning more. And I know they're starting to teach it in medical school, which is fabulous. And we've got our Gen Xers who are the advocates and are talking to the younger generation and our own generation about it. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest things. And I would say the research part of it was definitely eye-opening in terms of women, because, and I don't know if this happened with you as well, Anna, because I know you're an expert in helping to treat menopausal and perimenopausal women. But for me, when I was going through it, I felt very alone. I didn't really know that other women were experiencing the same thing. And at the time that I was going through it, even though if you look at the average age of women going through menopause is 51 and a half in North America, I went through it at about 50. And I remember asking my friends if they were experiencing some of the things that I was experiencing. And they were like, nope, I have no idea what you're talking about. So at the time I thought, well, wait, is it just me who's starting to go through all this? Am I alone on an island somewhere? So I think that was surprising, is that so many other women actually were experiencing the same exact thing. And I didn't feel as alone once I started to really understand the space a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think that's so powerful because as women start to open up, right, to use their voice and to share their experiences vulnerably, that's conversations being had more and more. So you don't feel as alone and you're not going through and you wonder, okay, how did our, elder generations do this? Like, how did they go through this and what happened in the interim? And I would say, being in the medical field, in the interim, from the development of Premarin in the 1950s, it was like, okay, here, take this pill. And then here, let's do this hysterectomy. And here, let's go ahead and remove your ovaries. And then women were just, I mean, that
Yeah.
was it. That was the decision making process. Then they were put, and before or after, put on SSRIs, counseling, psychological issues, all of that, when it was really understanding our hormones, understanding the natural transition, empowering our body to handle this transition, to
Yeah.
optimize our hormone balance through this time of transition, transformation, really a time of empowerment and transformation, and to really support women as we go through this is the movement that I'm falling in love with in this area. And there's one thing I love so much about your work too, is that you're a researcher, you're a nutritionist by background, and you've dug into, okay, what really helps us? What really can help us and support us during this time? Because I would say it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones.
Well, that's it, and also I think the biggest part of it is that when we don't know what's happening to us, we can't really ask or verbalize. Like, for me, it's all about the vocabulary. Can we speak to what it is we're experiencing? And once we know, then we're able to ask our doctors, our healthcare providers, our friends, family, partner for help, right? And I think that's the number one thing, is the education around it, which is why I'm so passionate about it. Because if you know, through our surveys, what we find is that a lot of women know that they're seeing changes. Or we have a new survey we just did on men's perspective of menopause, and it's so interesting to hear what those responses are, because I literally go in and we have sections where it's like, tell us more, and like I just read all the comments. And when you don't really understand what's happening, it's really hard to ask for that help or treatment that you need. So I love what you're saying, because now once we know what we're actually going through, then we can go and say, okay, I would like to focus more on nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements, or hormones, or hormones, if that's what you choose to do. Or so your patients will come to you and say, Dr. Anna, like, here's what I'm going through. You're like, yep, perimenopause. Okay, here's what we can do from a treatment standpoint. So that's why it's so important for me that we have that education and that awareness.
I'm curious what the men said, because I know whenever I talk to men, especially about sexual health, around menopause, etc., They are like, I want my mate to do everything she can to feel better. I just want her to be happy. Like, I want her to invest in herself. I want her to use whatever she needs to. Like, I am for it. So, what I'm curious what your responses were.
I mean, they're very interesting. So we're in the midst of collecting them right now, but and I go in every day and I kind of read what people are saying, and I I would have to say that it's interesting because a lot of the men want to help their wives, and I obviously don't have the breakdown right now because we're in the midst of collecting it all, but want to help their partners or their wives, and then another bunch of them are saying that their wives aren't even accepting the fact or maybe don't know the fact that they're in this phase of life, so they can't really get the help they're needing, which is why it's kind of full circle to what we were just discussing. So I will take you up on that, and I will definitely share that information as soon as I have a lot more collected. We actually have almost, I think, almost 250 responses on that,
That's amazing.
which is pretty incredible. And we just launched it like I think it was 2.5 weeks ago. Like so, it's definitely something that I would love to share with you as soon as we have more that are coming in, and then I'll share the percentages and what people are saying.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's important because, to have a voice either way, female, male, but to also get that perspective because a lot of times, in especially working in intimacy and sexual health, a woman often doesn't share what she's going through or is powering through vaginal dryness, discomfort issues for their partner, for their husband, so that she, is doing her wifely duties or checking that box or that's what he wants. But when she realizes that her pleasure is his pleasure, and if she's not having pleasure, that's not a point for him. That's not a success
Yeah,
score for him. And so
absolutely.
getting to that point of communicating it versus powering through to see um, what's just to check a box is detrimental to yourself, especially. And to being able to hear too, look, your voice matters no matter what. Your voice
Mm,
matters. Your real experience authentically is yours. And the more you can share about it, number one, you'll find out you're not alone, but you help someone else along the journey.
yeah,
Now, Andrea,
exactly.
you've dug deep into research. You've published four and you have a fifth publication coming. I'd love for you to talk about some of your research in this area of menopause and libido.
Sure. Thank you for asking. So last year, so in December of 2024, we had 4 abstracts that were published in the journal Menopause, which is really incredible. So we had the number of symptoms. So we were published for the 103 plus signs and symptoms of menopause. And we were published for the anxiety. So for anxiety and how mental health as we go into this phase of life. Sleep was another big one that we were published for, and then we also were published for a survey called doctor visits. So we wanted to understand what doctors and healthcare providers were saying to their patients, but also how many times were they visiting them. So those were big focuses for us. And then this year we just found out, as we were saying before we hit record, is that we just found out this week that we will have the 5th one being published, which is on our libido survey, which is very exciting, again, in the journal Menopause. So for me, the reason why we launched our surveys in the first place was because we have this incredible community and I wanted to understand what they were going through. And back years ago, I was at a party with my husband and I bumped into an old friend. And we were kind of getting caught up in what we were doing. And I had asked her what she was up to. And she said she was creating an app for menopausal symptoms. And at the time I was like, but don't you need like to have a lot of symptoms to create an app for it? Like you can't just have one or two. And she was like, no, no, Andrea, there's like a lot. There's like 34 to 40 symptoms. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize that there were that many. So the way my brain works is I'm very data driven. And I went home and I started creating this document tracking all the different symptoms and then reading medical journals and looking at our community and reading and going online and speaking to family and friends. And I wanted to understand what it was that they were experiencing. So in 2022, I thought, you know what, well, why don't we actually create a survey and ask the community? And to date, we have over 5,200 responses to that
Wow.
signs and symptoms survey. That was our first survey that we created. So way more than the 34 to 40 that you see. And if you Google, it's always like 34 recognized symptoms. No, there's 103. It's in a medical journal now, which is important for me to understand, it's important for me to understand the number of symptoms only because I feel that It's great when women will go to their doctor and say, let's say I have itchy ears, and the doctor will say, okay, so let's rule out anything that it can be. Could it be allergies? Could it be, something that's going on ENT wise? And if they come back and say, we can't figure out what it is, at least now we know that it could possibly be a perimenopause or menopause symptom, right? So it gives us that, a framework, at least for the healthcare providers and the doctors that aren't as savvy about perimenopause and menopause, to say, okay, so maybe once we rule it all out, possibly it could be a symptom, so that we can provide you with treatment or, some type of recommendation to help you.
And so when you started digging into these symptoms, especially like over 100, 103 symptoms,
A lot.
what are some of the lesser known symptoms? Because we always associate the fatigue, the hot flashes, the weight gain, especially around the belly, the waist gain,
The waist
and,
gain, yes.
and mood swings, hair loss, vaginal dryness, loss of libido. So those are some of and the irregular menstrual cycles, cycle
Yeah.
stopping, etc.
Yeah. So some of the lesser known ones would be, like, for example, the itchy ears. That's a really big one. Phantom smells is another one. So we have a survey for phantom smells as well. So that's when you smell things that don't actually exist in your environment. And what we found from that survey is that the main thing that women in perimenopause and menopause, that the main phantom smell they're having is smoke, some type of smoke or burning of something.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
by far, that is what it is. And then there's mildew and there's body odor, so it kinda goes down from there, but those that is the most. So, actually, it was funny, a friend of mine was on a beach vacation last year, and she messaged me saying, "Thank goodness for your research, because I literally was on the beach smelling smoke, and there was nothing around us," and, like, she's like, and she was 58 at the time, and she's like, "Yep, it's probably a menopause or perimenopause symptom." So, it was very interesting, but, so phantom smells are a big one. BO is another one that's a little lesser known. Vertigo, tinnitus, cold flashes. We often hear about hot flashes, but cold flashes, that gets a lot of, I guess, a lot of comments when we talk about that on our social media.
Mm.
Burning scalp, burning mouth, burning
Burning
tongue,
tongue. Yeah.
burning feet. So that's another really big one. And then social anxiety, like impending doom, any of that from, like, the moods and from the mental health component, loss of appetite. Those are some of the lesser known, but still common.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating when you think about these things and to think, okay, what's the underlying reason for these symptoms? The itchy ears, the dryness, we get that, but the burning tongue, I always like when I have a patient with burning tongue, it's like, okay, there's always we detox, do the foundations, adrenal support, detox support, hormonal balance, but like, and then there's the, red flags of heavy metal, mold toxicity. What else is causing this burning tongue? From a menopause standpoint, just thinking these imbalances
Mm.
or
I
impaired detoxification.
I know that's probably your area of expertise in terms of understand what's happening with our hormones. Like, for example, itchy ears, as our estrogen levels go down, estrogen keeps things moist and plump, as you know, and it affects our skin, the moisture on our skin, including the mucous membranes in our ears, right? So that would
Mhm.
be one of the reasons for that. But it's definitely, like, there's a lot going on, and obviously hormones plays a big role. What's interesting is that when we did the signs and symptoms survey, we wanted to break down what are the body systems that are most affected, and from the symptoms themselves, I'm going to throw it out at you. What do you think is the number one system that's affected?
For during menopause,
So perimenopause and menopause, but specifically related to symptoms.
the nervous system.
Bingo, you got
Yeah.
it exactly. The nervous system.
And so you did a whole research on anxiety. What was that research?
So we found out that 66% of women are more stressed now than they were before they went into perimenopause and menopause. About 60% of the women are actually doing something to manage their stress, which I actually loved hearing. And so that included watching a funny movie or TV show. That was the number one way that they're de-stressing.
I love it.
Meditation and
That's
exercise.
oxytocin increasing behavior for
Isn't
sure.
that great? So those were, like, the top 3, exercise and then, meditation were the top 3. But, like, things like going for walks in nature every single day, if you can just be in nature, right? It helps with the parasympathetic. So, again, stimulating that parasympathetic nervous system, being around people that you love, maybe minimizing the time that around people that you don't really love. Maybe if the news stresses you out, turning it off, not watching it as much, putting down boundaries, learning to say no. All of those are important things that the women shared with our community in our survey.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think the emotional aspects of perimenopause and menopause, and statistics have shown that by the time a woman goes through menopause, she's been struggling with symptoms for 10 to 15 years. It's not the 1 to 2 that we were taught way back in the 80s or 90s, 1 to 2 years, it's 10 to 15 years. And so, like, that is
Yeah.
profound, and the earlier we can get ahead of this, the better, but the early
Yes.
symptoms are the PMS, the anxiety, the depression with right before your period, so
The
that's
sleep
that
issues, right? Like,
sleep
the sleep
issue.
starts changing. Yes.
Those 2, anxiety and difficult and issues with sleep, those are profound during this time, and it's so important to understand this because the most common treatments that women get are, a antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication and a sleep aid. And we're like, "Okay, well, let's address the underlying hormone imbalance issues. Let's empower your body's." I start with the beginning. Let's empower your body's ability to produce its own hormones and use them better, detox the systems, decrease the, toxic burden or endocrine disruptors. You want to follow those paths, but that anxiety and depression and bipolar type of mood swings that so many people get diagnosed with bipolar, you know, I would say more wrongfully than rightfully. It's because of these hormonal swings that they're happening. If they understand this is a transition piece, and plus nutrition and exercise and meditation and mindset, those oxytocin seeking behaviors are things you can do about it, then they feel empowered and not, hey, this is in my head. I'm going crazy.
What's interesting when you asked me before, something that surprised me is, according from our research, is that what we found out is that out of the top 10 most common symptoms, 50 to 90% are actually cognitive mental health related. So we think of, or we hear usually it's about the physical symptoms like hot flashes, right? That's the most synonymous when it comes to menopause, but it's actually very much so cognitive and mental health related too. So it's important, exactly what you're saying. So this is where that awareness comes in and trying to understand it. We also found that on average, women had 31 different symptoms. So yes,
Wow.
we can go through perimenopause. They say on average, I think it's like 7 to 8 years on average, but I've had women tell me they're in perimenopause. I was in perimenopause for 14 years, 11 of which I had no idea. So
Mhm.
think about that, right? And I'm not the only one. Like, there's so many thousands and thousands of women who have the same experience where they're going through this time of life and they don't understand what is happening to them. So that's where things start to, like, that's why it's so important that they get the help they need.
And what helped you the most?
So for me, my focus, I'm very much about nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements. So at the time when I first started learning about this, I didn't really know about now the whole WHI study has become this, like, it's so much more spoken about, right? But you're talking, this is when in 2017 when I started experiencing it. So I didn't even realize at the time that I could be like, okay, hormone therapy wasn't even an option for me. And genetically, I remember I had seen somebody who I did a DNA test, a genetic test, and they were like, oh, you can't even touch hormones because of what your genes are. Right. So I know you're it's like, now we know so much more, right? So this was, so many years ago. And I was like, oh, so what am I going to do? And I had terrible, terrible, terrible symptoms. Like, I had terrible hot flashes where I couldn't even function. So I set myself on a mission. I was already doing the nutrition part. I had to get better at the lifestyle part about managing stress because it's a massive part of it, and then also changing the way I exercise, right? So I was focusing mostly on cardio, but now I'm like had to shift to doing weight training, resistance training. But I would say for me, what helped me, so I was doing that already, although a lot of it wasn't working the same way. So I had to
Mhm.
shift my nutrition, right? I didn't focus on protein the way we know we need to focus it on it now. I had to, look at what I was eating in a different way. I had to look at my exercise in a different way, and I looked at supplements. So for me, I would say supplements played a very big role, which is why I started Morphus, because I was able to help my hot flashes through supplements at the time. So, and even now, that's what I'm taking now, because I do hormones. I do DHEA, which I love, is, in your Java, but also I take oral DHEA. So, and I've come a long way, and I even want to start looking at, other types of hormones like estrogen. So these are things that are always and constantly evolving, right? But at least for me at the time when I was doing it, I would say nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements were huge. And now possibly looking at, at looking at hormones, because I'm on thyroid. I had to change my thyroid medication, which is hormones. I'm on taking the oral DHEA, and now possibly looking at other options too. So I think I would say all of it makes a really big difference.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm gonna send you some balance cream, that's for sure. Because for me, it's like the progesterone is magic, right? Progesterone is so key,
I love it.
and
Yeah.
especially in perimenopause, and when we're stressed, we deplete progesterone. to make, cortisol. So we deplete that even more. And then who's
Yeah.
not stressed in
The
perimenopause?
steel, right? That's what it's called, the progesterone steel,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And what are some key supplements that are your favorites?
So I would say for women who are in perimenopause and menopause, I'd say we have foundation supplements that I've really, through my research and spent a lot of time looking at, is I would say most of us need magnesium because magnesium is crucial. That when we're stressed, as we know we are, we're more stressed. We deplete magnesium from our body. And when magnesium is depleted, we become more stressed. So, and magnesium is important for hundreds and hundreds of processes in the body. So
Exactly.
I would say magnesium, and I love magnesium bisglycinate. There are many different forms of magnesium, but I like bisglycinate only because I kind of think of it as the superhero of magnesium, the red cape. It's always wearing that red cape because it's very gentle on our stomach and it's well absorbed. So I love that. And it's amazing for sleep, which we know is the third most common symptom of perimenopause and menopause. So magnesium, I love omega 3s for heart, hair, nails, skin, brain health. So omega 3s, and they're amazing, by the way, omega 3s, whether it's fish oil or algae or algal oil. Omega 3s are excellent for dry eyes. So, any type of hydration from the inside out, and incredible for itchy ears as well. So, that is a remedy. So, if you have itchy ears or dry eyes, it was actually my eye doctor that recommended them for me when I had meibomian gland dysfunction, which is dry eyes. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to try it. And magic. So, it works great. And then I would say if you're having issues, not even if you're having issues, but you want to make sure you're going to the bathroom at least once a day. So some type of soluble fiber supplement I really love. We kind of call that our foundational trio, which is what we have at Morphus. And then there's other ones that, what does your body in particular need, right? So like I'm a big fan actually of vitamin D3 plus K2 MK7. So that to me is, I believe we should all be on it. Get your vitamin D levels checked, find out where you're at, and then you could supplement with it. And take your vitamin D with your K2 MK7, please, because what it does, it helps to
Always.
get the calcium into the bones. So very important. I'm also a big fan of melatonin, especially for women in menopause, because we don't make our own anymore. So I love getting it from an outside source. And again, helping us with sleep. But as you know, I'm sure Dr. Anna, that melatonin is great for not only sleep, but it has so many other benefits as
It's
well.
antioxidant. So, and then low melatonin, low oxytocin, high melatonin, high oxytocin. So
I'm
we
a
want to
big
work on
fan.
that. I
Yeah.
think it's important to talk too about those omegas. Well, first, I love magnesium bisglycinate. I usually use it with magnesium L-threonate. That combination is amazing, but bisglycinate for sure. And omegas, absolutely. The issue now is we have so many, especially like post pandemic, like, oxidative issues. So
Yes.
oxidative
Gotta be
stress
careful.
issues. So you have to be careful with the omega. So it's really important to do the antioxidant rich diet as a key. The antioxidant rich diet really open up those detox pathways, do things like that, and adding the omegas. And I will say every woman that has had two children or more always have deficient omega levels in their blood. They've always deficient omega levels, and so omega 3 levels. So it's important supplementation, but it's also in that context. Okay, let's get down inflammation. Look at those inflammatory markers, oxidative
Yeah.
stress markers, and then you get that under control. You know, can go up on those omegas.
I'm a huge believer in omega 3s. I take them every day. And also, obviously, and one of the things too as a nutritionist for over 20 years, I always say you can't out supplement good nutrition. So you want to get your nutrition from your food first. Always, always food first. But as a nutritionist who also believes in supplements, I do believe we need to supplement our diet, and especially things like, so if you're eating your fish, you can get your omega 3s from your fatty fish. And that's important, like your sardines and your salmon and your mackerel. So you definitely incorporate that into your diet if you can, if you're not vegan. And then also you can take it additionally as a supplement, especially if you have dryness issues like skin dryness or your ears are itchy or any of that kind of stuff. But also, again, like you said, for antioxidant purposes, reducing inflammation, all of that. And we're more prone to more inflammation, right? As we go into perimenopause and menopause. So yes, I'm on the same page. I'm a big fan of omega 3s.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's important to understand, like, as we age, inflammatory markers increase, so we have to be more aggressive, and
Yeah.
especially during this transition phase, and I
Yeah.
always think cholesterol is not a bad guy, right? Cholesterol is
Right.
not the bad guy, but we need healthy cholesterol.
Yeah. Yeah, and now I mean, that's not my area of expertise at all, but I know I do a lot of I read a lot about it and cholesterol, and especially it's tied to thyroid health. So I think, yeah, the more I learn, I agree with you.
And you did a survey recently. This is going to be your fifth publication on libido. I want to talk about that and hear some of the responses and some of those statistics around libido, because that is an area that I often hear. And actually, one of the most read articles in the New York um, was it New York Times Magazine? New York Times Magazine was the sexless marriage
Mm.
and how that was a real issue. And I always hear it from clients, like they feel like they're roommates and they love it when they get back to being lovers again. And so it's a big issue. And it's often one of the things that sometimes, like, oh, well, you've been married over 2 years. What do you expect at this point? And sometimes those um, feelings can be dismissed. And I love that you're bringing attention to it and, empowering people to talk more about it. So, what did your research say?
So yeah, it's very exciting. Like I said, we talked, like I mentioned earlier, we just found out this week that we're going to be published in the journal Menopause this year regarding libido. So what we found is that 91% of women, so this is brand new off the press. So you're the first person I'm talking about it with. So that's exciting. So 91% of the women, so this was based on it was 1,291 women who responded to the survey. And 91% said that they experienced a notable decrease in libido or sexual desire, and
How many?
91% out of
91%.
almost 1,300 people.
Wow.
And
And
six
these are all menopause, perimenopause, age range?
Yeah, exactly. So the age range was 45 to 59.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Primarily. I mean, there were women who were like 35 to older, but primarily was 45 to 59. And then 66% reported a reduction in their ability to achieve orgasm. So those were the big takeaways from that. And then they said that notably 83% of respondents who experienced changes in libido or sexual desire reported discussing their thoughts, feelings, or concerns with someone else. And the most frequently cited confidants were healthcare providers at 76%, 76.6%, partners or spouses, almost 72%, friends, family members, therapists, and colleagues, which were the least at 7.2%. So a lot of them what we're discussing it with our healthcare providers, which are the ones we're discussing it the most with. So we're looking for help in that area.
Mhm. And what were some of the responses that their healthcare providers or that they were given? I know that was part of your survey too.
Yeah.
So,
So among the women who shared their changing libido or sex drive with someone else, the advice or responses they received were a little bit varied, but 34.2% were advised to use lubrication. 31.6 were recommended hormone therapy. So this is other than vaginal estrogen. Compassion without specific guidance was reported by about 31% of the respondents. 22.3 were told to engage in sexual activity regardless of desire. Basically, it was often framed as their marital or wifely duty.
mm,
18.3% were prescribed antidepressants, and about 15% were advised to go on dates with their partner or spouse. 14% were advised to use a vibrator. 13.3 were told to use it or lose it. 13.1% were encouraged to try supplements to enhance their sexual arousal, and 11.8% were advised to lose weight, which, that was a little bit disheartening to hear, to be honest.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah.
And so, I mean, this is, again, it's this awareness. We're asking for help, and some of the recommendations that we're getting could definitely be optimized. I hope, like, are you putting a list together? Like, here's what healthcare providers should recommend when clients have this issue.
So here's what's interesting. So the one survey we didn't talk about yet, we didn't talk so much about the sleep one, but the doctor's visit survey, that
Yeah.
what we found out is that 40% of the women who do go to their doctor, and that also had over 1,000 responses, that are dismissed by their healthcare provider. So 40%. And about 17 or 18% of them had to visit their doctor 4+ times to
Wow.
actually make the connection between their symptoms, like how they were feeling, and them being in perimenopause and menopause. So we wanted to first understand, how are women being accepted or treated or responded to when they do go see their healthcare provider. So then we launched a part two, which is ongoing right now, and we haven't collected the data yet because I want to get more people who fill it out. It's called Healthcare Insights. And this is actually came up because when I was at the Menopause Society show last year, showcasing our posters, our four posters, a lot of the healthcare providers asked us to say, like, who are these women going to see? Are they going to see their family doctors? Are they going to their OBGYNs? Like, who are they actually seeing? So this is where we're hopefully going to get, we want to get enough people so that we'll go and submit that for publication and all. And that's really interesting. I think right now we have over 400 responses to that, which is really great. So I think, the more that we learn, the more that we find out about, and we make that connection between our healthcare providers and what they're offering, I think we'll be able to, and they understand what their patients are going through, they'll be able to provide other things that they can recommend. But right now, what we found out is mostly recommended by their healthcare providers is hormones, number 2, and antidepressants, number 1. So we're hoping that changes the more that doctors understand menopause and perimenopause. But right now they're neck and neck, with just a touch more being the antidepressant recommendation.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I think I was just, as you're talking, I made a note to myself. It's we need to create a handout to interview your doctors, like even to submit it to the front office staff. Does Doctor such and such address these issues? Knowledge in nutrition, lifestyle, or hormone therapy, or sexual health issues, because you want to select first of all, you want to drive your selection and reduce the number of doctor's visits or doctor hopping, because by the time a patient comes to see me,
Oh,
it's often they've been to 7 and more doctors for
oh
this
yeah,
issue.
100%. Like, and because they're either not getting answers or they're being dismissed, right, or
Right.
gaslit.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
So it's frustrating for the women, right? And then also think about in terms of health anxiety and amount of money that is being spent. Like, so there's so much that we could be doing to help minimize that. The more doctors and healthcare providers like yourself understand it, and that can help women who are in perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah, no, I think that's so powerful. That's, just powerful information. And, when you're working, like when you're doing this research and your goal to do the libido research and the libido survey, what was your initial goal as you decided to launch that?
So I launched it in partnership with Marcella Hill from Wake Her Up,
Yeah.
and she talks a lot about that. I love Marcella, and then also Dr. James Simon was a co-author on it. So he was the past president of the Menopause Society,
Yes.
and he focuses on sexual health. So together, we just wanted to understand where were women at in this phase of life. We know, we hear from women that their libido is decreasing, but we just wanted to get an actual number around it. And then we also wanted to understand their ability to orgasm. We also wanted to understand, like, what are people saying to them? How are they getting the treatment that they need? So we're just getting started
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
this type of research. So we now have a part 2 to our doctor's visit survey. So I'm sure we'll have more parts to our sexual health survey, our libido survey. So it's just to keep peeling the onion to find out what women need, what they want, what their experiences are. Like, that for me is the most important thing. It's like, I want to know what women are experiencing, and then that way we can understand how we can help them.
Yeah. Yeah. And curious too, like, to add, I'm like adding to your survey, but it's like, what has been the most helpful thing that you found? Like, to ask women that, because I was asked that in my patient visits. Up to date, what's been the most helpful thing that you found? It just adds to my armamentarium. There's always something else too, but it's interesting to hear, especially in this area, what's helped you the most. And sometimes it is just being listened to, just being heard, just having my experiences validated, just feeling like I'm not alone, feeling like there's something I can do. I'm not a hopeless case. Like, things like that I hear over and over again. And just so, as a provider, it's like, always like get present and listen and learn. And that's part of the healing, I think, the healing intervention, part of the healing process too. And then, okay, we've got a whole armamentarium of stuff, right? We've got diets and lifestyle and supplements and hormones and all this stuff too. But also just realizing, like you said, you had felt alone in this. And way
Oh,
back
so
when,
alone.
as educated as I was, and at 39 to be diagnosed early menopause and completely infertile, I was devastated. I was devastated, and the answers being given me were not palatable at all.
Mm,
Antidepressant and, yeah, Xanax. So, those weren't answers. So I love
mm,
learning about that aspect too. And you've done a sleep study too.
mm.
You did research around sleep. Tell us about that.
So we know, according to our signs and symptoms survey, that sleep is the number 3. So the number 1 symptom across the board, 72% of women experience in perimenopause and menopause is fatigue. Number 2 is brain fog, and number 3 is sleep. So
Mm.
I wanted to understand, okay, but what is it about sleep in this particular phase of life that what's keeping us awake? What is disrupting our sleep? So we found that the number 1 thing that women reported was that they're waking up between 2 and 4 a.m. Now, at the time, as a nutritionist and someone who's been in the health world for a long time, I was like, "Oh, it's gotta be cortisol that's rising too early, and that's why we're waking up between 2 and 4 AM, so it's gotta be stress." But I didn't ask the question properly on that survey, so I couldn't make the conclusion from that survey itself. So from that survey, it's waking up between 2 and 4 AM. Number 2 is bathroom visits. I've had women tell me they wake up every hour on the hour to go to the bathroom. Number 3 is night sweats. Number 4 was stress and anxiety. So then I thought, well, when we did our anxiety survey, I'm like, I'm going to ask the question here. So we asked the question is, are you waking up between 2 and 4 a.m.? And then the majority of the women said they were. And then we asked, well, what's keeping you awake between that time? And over 67% I think it was 67% of the women said anxiety, racing mind, I couldn't turn my mind off, et cetera, et cetera. So I was able to prove my hypothesis in my other survey, but not in the actual sleep one. But we now know that stress is the number 1 thing that's keeping us awake in perimenopause and menopause. So that's why it's really important that we do some type of stress management technique before bed and obviously during the day as well, but especially before you go to sleep, whether that's deep breathing, meditation, just winding down, reading a book, watching a funny movie, whatever it is, maybe some gentle yoga, a bath with some amazing essential oils that help to calm you, taking your magnesium, taking your sleep us. We have another product called Sleep Us with melatonin. These are things that kind of help you just relax your body and get into that that where you can kind of fall asleep and stay asleep so that you're not waking up between that 2 and 4 a.m. And that's really that's an important takeaway that we got from our sleep survey.
Yeah, no, that's powerful because I think of the pathways too. So, from tryptophan, we make 5-hydroxytryptophan. Do you supplement with that too? Do you
Just
have you ever
melatonin. We have a sustained release melatonin.
Yeah, so from tryptophan, we make 5-hydroxytryptophan, which we convert to serotonin, which then converts to melatonin.
Melatonin,
So you
yeah.
think up here, and progesterone keeps tryptophan active. And this time period, 35 to 55, we lose 75% of our progesterone level. And so, like, that's allowing tryptophan to degrade. So, less
Yep.
serotonin, less good night's sleep. So, that anxiety and sleeplessness are hand in hand there. And through the magnesium is responsible for what,
Oh,
300, over 300 process everything.
yeah,
So,
more.
getting that magnesium, getting that fish oils. But I'm going to, during perimenopause, support your adrenals to make more progesterone. So, there's always
Exactly.
that. And then, again, bioidentical progesterone can be game changing too for that deep sleep and that anxiety curve.
What are your thoughts on pregnenolone?
I love pregnenolone. My balance cream has
I take that as
progesterone
well.
and
Yeah.
pregnenolone. It's a combination. I love
Okay.
the combination. And I think when I looked at the research and I was doing a graph, all equated picograms per ml. So equating our pregnenolone, progesterone, DHEA, testosterone, and estrogen in the picograms per ml because we go from, we convert progesterone to cortisol, pregnenolone to DHEA to testosterone to estrogen. So I'm like, okay, there's this flow here. But, progesterone levels equated is like a magnitude of 1,000 times more than our testosterone and estrogen. And DHEA and pregnenolone are somewhere in the middle there, which makes so much sense. And it's just fascinating to think how we haven't really promoted it. I've been using it in combination for years because I brain health and mood, pregnenolone and progesterone, game changing. So
Mhm.
that's why I put them together. But I was speaking with a colleague, I had spoken at Harvard's Women's Health and Menopause Summit. And I was speaking with the director and Deborah Kwolek, and she was telling me that they're doing a study on perimenopause looking at pregnenolone.
Amazing.
Finally, I'm like so excited to get
Yeah.
that research, but I love it. What do you love about it?
Well, I don't again, hormones are not my specialty, but I love it. I mean, I take a DHEA supplement that has pregnenolone in it, and I feel good on it. I like the way I feel, and I know I've said this 1,000 times to you, but I love your Java cream. Like, it's so good. Like, so I have the DHEA, there too. So, like, I don't know, I just love the combination, and for me, I always have energy. It's a little bit more of like my personality type, but I I just like how I feel on it.
Yeah. Well, according to the research, where progesterone declines 75%, 35 to 55, estrogen 35%, pregnenolone 60% decline, age 35 to 55. So they keep thinking we need to keep empowering it. But you add on, again, anything that's going to be any stresses in our lives are depleting our bucket. So we always have to do this lifestyle stress management pieces.
Yeah. No, I love it. And like you said before, our adrenals are so important. Now I've spent so many years working on nourishing my adrenal glands, because for the longest time I was exhausted. I was, super tired, especially in perimenopause. I mean, there were times I couldn't get out of bed, but then also I had thyroid things. So, like, everything is so interconnected, right? And complex. And that's why I always say I leave all that to you, like to people like yourself who are doctors, because you're geniuses in terms of figuring all that out. But, for me as a nutritionist, I've always worked on it in terms of my nutrition. And then again, those lifestyle tools, how do we bring that into it? And supplements, what are ways that we can help to nourish our adrenal glands? And that's where when you said before about the nervous system being the most effective, you got that right. And our research says that is that it's the nervous system that's so affected. That's why it's so key that we do what we can to help nourish our adrenal glands and to help just like, right, take a breath to help de-stress us and to help us relax, because it'll go a really far way in terms of helping to manage our symptoms and not possibly triggering them, right? Like, if you think about when you're stressed, what happens, it can sometimes start a cascade of different things that you're feeling, right? It's, blood sugar, right? If you get stressed, it can trigger a hot flash, or your blood sugar is going to spike, right? Possibly. So there's so many things that kind of come from that if we could just learn. And by the way, I'm trying to learn this every single day. It's not that easy. It's like, yeah, manage your stress. Okay, sure. Right? Like,
Right.
it's not that easy sometimes, right? So we really have to do what we can and be cognizant of it, and to really be hyper focused on it. And I do try that. And now I've tried every morning. I'm really trying, now that the weather's nicer, and I can go outside in the morning and just relax, drink a cup of tea, look at nature around me. I'm really trying to have more of a conscious morning practice, where I started off with, and it doesn't have to be like, I'm not like the best at sitting and just meditating. Like, I'm just sitting and watching the trees, and I love to say my mantras. I'm big on mantras, and taking some deep breaths and just relaxing. And it doesn't have to be for long, but it's kind of just grounding myself before I start my day. And I find that really helps. And my mom says the same thing. My mom was telling me how she starts every morning with EFT, emotional freedom technique, and
Oh,
she does her mantras. And she said that has made a world of difference for her on her stress levels. So little things like that I find can make a difference. Setting an alarm clock on your phone to remind yourself to breathe, right? That's another really big one. So little things I'm trying to improve every single day to help manage my stress.
yeah. No, I love that. And what is what's a favorite meal? Your favorite medicinal meal?
Medicinal meal? Oh gosh.
Your nourishing meal.
My favorite, I know what you mean. What do I love? So I'm a meat eater, so I actually really love chicken. I have to say, I love chicken. I love dark meat. I love chicken. I love fish. I like salmon. I love cauliflower rice. So sometimes I'll make myself a dish with like cauliflower rice and some shrimp and some scallops. So I would say and mushrooms. I love mushrooms. So any type of mushroom, the more the better. So putting all that, I would say that's one of my favorite meals to make. And I don't know, it's so yummy and just feel
Oh,
good.
yeah, it
Yeah,
sounds good. It sounds
it's so
good.
yummy.
Yeah. No, I love it. And tell our audience about I've loved our discussion. I can't wait to connect with you more on your research, and tell our audience how to connect with you and fill out your surveys too.
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is www.wearemorphous.com. So my company, we just made up the word. It's morph, like metamorphosis, us
Mhm.
as a community. So morph us. So wearemorphous.com. And you could go at the top, it says research. So you could see you have like, I think right now we're at 13 surveys. We launched a PCOS and menopause one. We launched our men's perspective. We're launching a headache and migraine one as well. I don't know when this is coming out, but that's and all related to perimenopause and menopause. And then you could fill them all out. They take under a minute to 2 minutes. Like they're super short. So you could fill them out really quickly. And if you're interested in any of our products, it's under the shop part.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And also on TikTok and social media?
Yeah, so at Andrea Donsky on TikTok, that's where I like to live. I have an amazing community there, and then on Instagram at Andrea Donsky and at We Are Morphous, and then pretty much anywhere on YouTube as well at We Are Morphous. So pretty much anywhere you'll find us with one of those two names at We Are Morphous or at Andrea Donsky.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I appreciate you and all the work you're doing and how you're helping women right before, during, and after menopause through
Thank
this
you.
transformation.
Thank you, and right back at you.
Thank you. This was a super fun discussion to speak with Andrea Donsky about menopause and her research in perimenopause, menopause, the symptoms, over 100 symptoms associated with perimenopause and menopause. And this is a journey that we are all in together, God willing, right? We're all in this together. So I think one of the key take home points is that using our voice, being authentic, expressing what we're experiencing, and being heard, this is key. And as women and as leaders in your life and your family and your communities, that you also share and hold safe space to listen to others so that they feel heard as well. We're in this together. And I love being your girlfriend doctor. So please share this information widely and subscribe on my YouTube channel at The Girlfriend Doctor. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you. This is Dr. Anna Cabeca, and God bless.
Thanks for watching another episode of the Girlfriend Doctor podcast. Check out all the links below for more.